Welcome to Stamps Old World UK, your trusted destination for exploring the fascinating stories, values, and historical depth behind some of the world's most remarkable postage stamps. Today, we are taking a long and captivating journey into the world of high-value philately by focusing on one of the most iconic American stamps ever issued, the 1893 $4 Colombian stamp featuring Queen Isabella and Christopher Columbus. This stamp is not just a piece of old paper with ink, it is a powerful symbol of history, culture, and rare artistry. Issued as part of the legendary Columbian Exposition stamp series, this $4 denomination was produced to commemorate the 400th anniversary of Columbus's voyage to the New World. The striking deep rose color and the dual portrait design make it one of the most visually memorable stamps ever released by the United States. What makes this stamp even more intriguing is its limited printing and high face value for the time, which meant fewer people could afford it, and even fewer examples have survived in mint condition. Now, let's talk about the value of this rare stamp in today's booming collector market. In 2025, the value of the 1893 $4 Columbian stamp depends heavily on its condition, centering, and whether it has ever been used. A mint condition stamp with full original gum and no hinges can be worth anywhere between $7,000 and $20,000 depending on eye appeal and certification from a philatelic expert. Used stamps with clean cancellations can still fetch $1,000 to $3,000 or even more if the cancellation is light and the centering is exceptional. Stamps that are off-center, heavily cancelled, or damaged are still collectible but will naturally be valued lower. However, given the historical importance of this stamp, even lower-grade examples are highly desirable to many collectors. Major auction houses like Heritage Auctions, Siegel Auctions, and Spink often feature these Columbian stamps in their premium catalogs, where bidding wars between seasoned philatelists can drive prices beyond expectations. The $4 Columbian stamp is just one highlight in a broader trend we're seeing in the global stamp market today. Over the last decade, and especially in the past few years, the value of rare and historical stamps has been steadily rising. As more collectors, investors, and history enthusiasts enter the market, demand for high-quality classic stamps has grown substantially. With the digitization of auctions and online marketplaces such as eBay, Delcamp, and Hipstamp, it has become easier than ever to access and evaluate rare items from around the world. This accessibility has led to increased competition and higher prices for top-tier stamps. Beyond the Columbians, other high-value issues include British penny blacks, early French series stamps, Chinese red revenue stamps, and error issues like the US inverted Jenny or Canada's Seaway inverted. All of these stamps reflect a similar market pattern: rarity, story, and condition dictate price. It's important to understand that stamp collecting today is not just a nostalgic hobby, it's a serious global market where knowledge and timing can result in significant financial gain. The condition of a stamp is absolutely critical in determining its value. Philatelists use terms like mint never hinged, very fine, superb, and lightly hinged to grade a stamp. A stamp in superb condition with vibrant color, sharp printing, full gum, and perfect centering can be worth several times more than a similar stamp with minor flaws. Collectors and investors alike are encouraged to store their collections properly using acid-free stock books, albums with protective sleeves, and stamp tongs to avoid damaging the delicate paper. In addition, obtaining a certificate of authenticity from a trusted organization such as the American Philatelic Society or the Philatelic Foundation can dramatically boost a stamp's market value. The beauty of stamp collecting lies in its combination of art, history, and investment potential. Every stamp tells a story, not just of the subject it depicts but also of the time and place in which it was issued. The $4 Columbian stamp tells us about America's celebration of exploration and discovery in the late 19th century, about the grandeur of the world's Columbian Exposition, and about how even something as simple as a postage stamp can become a treasured artifact over time. It represents a moment frozen in history, and its rising value today reflects both its scarcity and its profound historical resonance. Whether you inherited an old album from your grandparents or you're an avid collector yourself, it's worth examining each stamp carefully. You never know which one could be the hidden gem that makes headlines in the auction world. As we look at today's stamp market more broadly, it's clear that collectors from all over the world are willing to pay premium prices for unique and historically significant items. This trend is not limited to the United States. Stamps from the British Empire, such as the Mauritius Post Office issue or early Indian issues under British rule, are selling for hundreds of thousands of dollars. Similarly, rare German Zeppelin airmail stamps, early Japanese cherry blossom stamps, and old Ottoman Empire issues are rising in value. Collectors today are not only interested in national heritage but also global history. The internet has opened the doors to a much more interconnected and educated collecting community, and with that comes a dramatic increase in value for stamps with verifiable rarity and clean provenance. Next up, the $4 United States Documentary Internal Revenue Stamp. This is not your average postage stamp. It is a symbol of an era when taxation was enforced not through computers and online payments, but through printed stamps physically affixed to documents that fueled the nation's economy. The stamp we are discussing today is more than just ink on paper. It is an artifact from a time when every legal and financial transaction required tangible proof of tax paid. With its intricate engraving and classic Romanesque profile of liberty crowned with a laurel wreath, this brown $4 documentary stamp not only served a practical purpose but also carried the unmistakable authority and weight of the U.S. federal government. The story of revenue stamps begins during periods of war and Reconstruction, when governments needed reliable methods to raise funds. The United States introduced its first revenue stamps during the Civil War in 1862 as a way to finance the Union's military campaign. The concept was simple yet highly effective. If you needed to sign a legal document, purchase stocks, execute a deed, or apply for a license, you had to pay a tax, and that tax was shown by affixing a revenue stamp like the one we're focusing on today. The $4 denomination was no small sum in those days. It would have been used on large financial transactions or contracts of considerable value. Because of its limited use and high denomination, this stamp was not printed in the vast numbers like lower denominations. As a result, finding an authentic and well-preserved $4 documentary stamp today is a significant achievement for any serious collector. Let's talk about the market value of this historical treasure in 2025. As the stamp collecting world continues to evolve, more and more collectors are beginning to appreciate the importance of revenue stamps. While once considered niche, these stamps are now becoming the centerpiece of many advanced collections. In today's market, a mint-condition $4 United States documentary stamp, with full original gum, no hinges, and pristine centering, can fetch anywhere between $500 and $1,200, depending on grading and certification. A lightly hinged or previously mounted example might still bring in $300 to $600, while a used version with a clean, legible cancellation typically ranges from $80 to $250. However, prices can surge higher if the stamp carries historical usage, such as being affixed to a famous document or displaying a rare hand stamp cancellation. There have been instances where collectors paid thousands of dollars for exceptionally rare varieties or error prints. The value is driven not only by the stamp's age and scarcity but also by its story and the demand among those who specialize in fiscal philately. What makes this stamp, and others like it, particularly interesting is the level of craftsmanship involved in their production. The detailed line engraving, the deliberate font choice, the classical imagery, and the fine shading all contribute to a design that commands attention. Back then, security printing was an art form. These stamps were printed to be tamper-resistant, and their artistic flourishes were also meant to deter forgery. Collecting these stamps allows us to admire not only their functionality but also their design excellence. In a world increasingly dominated by digital transactions and faceless emails, these stamps remind us of a time when physical, visual proof of a transaction was required, and often admired. Every fold, tear, or cancellation on a used documentary stamp tells a story of where it has been, who used it, and for what purpose. The appeal of revenue stamps extends far beyond the borders of the United States. Across the globe, countries like the United Kingdom, India, Germany, France, and Canada have issued documentary and fiscal stamps for centuries. But American documentary stamps, especially those from the 19th and early 20th centuries, have become a focal point for collectors due to their intricate designs and direct ties to historical events like the Civil War, the Spanish-American War, and the economic expansion of the Gilded Age. The $4 documentary stamp we are focusing on today is part of a much broader story, a story of a young and growing America, managing its finances, enforcing its laws, and building its economy through an ingenious tax mechanism that left behind beautiful and historically rich artifacts. In terms of preservation, collectors should take special care of revenue stamps. Due to their original practical use, many of these stamps were simply glued onto documents and then discarded once the paperwork was filed or completed. Surviving mint specimens are far rarer than most postal stamps from the same era. As a result, condition is everything. Stamps that have survived in an used, unhinged, and undamaged form are the true gems. Even used examples, if clean and well-centered, can be worth collecting, especially if they bear unique cancellation markings. To maintain their condition, always use stamp tongs when handling, store in acid-free albums, and avoid exposure to sunlight or moisture. If you believe your stamp may be of particular rarity, send it to a philatelic expertising service for authentication. This step can greatly enhance its market value and appeal to potential buyers. The future of the stamp market looks bright, especially for specialized categories like revenue stamps. As traditional postage becomes increasingly rare in everyday life, philately is evolving from simple hobby to historical preservation and investment. Collectors are now curators of culture, preserving evidence of a past that is rapidly fading from public memory. The $4 United States Internal Revenue documentary stamp is more than just an item in your collection. It is a link to a bygone world, a physical reminder of how government and business once operated, and a beautiful work of printed history that deserves our attention and admiration. Next up, the State of New York Stock Transfer Tax Stamp, specifically the $4 green version. This striking and beautifully engraved stamp represents more than just printed paper. It symbolizes an important part of American economic history and government regulation during the 20th century. These tax stamps were used not for mailing letters, but to confirm payment of taxes on the transfer of stocks and bonds, a process heavily controlled by law in financial centers such as New York City. During the height of Wall Street's influence, millions of dollars in stock changed hands daily, and each transaction required official tax documentation in the form of these revenue stamps. This system ensured the government could monitor and collect taxes on high-value exchanges, and it left behind a paper trail of rare, collectible stamps that today tell us a great deal about economic activity during that period. The $4 green stock transfer tax stamp was printed with clear purpose. In bold white type, the number 4 appears on each side of the stamp, with the word dollars placed squarely in the center. At the top, the heading, State of New York, is written in a traditional scroll style, while at the bottom we see the inscription, Stock Transfer Tax, reminding us of the purpose these stamps served. In the middle of the stamp, one can often see faint designs such as the New York State coat of arms or official emblems, depending on the variation and printing period. The stamp featured in today's video has a pen cancellation with the number 141 written over it, indicating that it has been used and was part of an actual transaction in the financial sector decades ago. These types of markings, though sometimes seen as imperfections, actually enhance the historical value for collectors who specialize in revenue or documentary stamps. Revenue stamps like these are often overlooked by general collectors who focus primarily on postage issues. However, in recent years, there has been a growing interest in fiscal stamps due to their rarity, complexity, and the unique insight they offer into historical government operations. The market for tax stamps, especially those from major financial centers like New York, has quietly grown, and knowledgeable collectors are starting to pay more attention to condition, cancellation style, printing variations, and rarity of specific denominations. This $4 stamp in particular is one of the mid to high range values used on larger transactions. Its strong color, historical relevance, and visual design make it a standout in any revenue stamp collection. As of today, the market value of a used $4 New York stock transfer tax stamp typically ranges between $5 and $15 when in average circulated condition. However, stamps that are cleanly canceled, well-centered, and free from tears or heavy creases can reach $20 or even $35, particularly when sold through dedicated philatelic auctions or dealer catalogs. On the other hand, a mint-condition version with no cancellation, bright gum, and crisp edges can fetch higher prices, sometimes going for $40 to $50 depending on the demand. It's important to note that the market for such items is often niche and fluctuates based on how frequently certain issues appear for sale, the interest of specialized collectors, and whether the stamp forms part of a larger complete set. Dealers often value these based not only on catalog listings but also on current trends in collecting and buyer interest. Another important factor in determining value is the historical context and legal background of the stamp itself. Stock transfer taxes were introduced as a way to ensure proper taxation on high-volume financial transactions. In the state of New York, the use of these stamps was legally required until the mid-20th century when electronic methods began to take over. Each stamp functioned as a legal receipt, and they were often affixed to the reverse of stock certificates. Their use ended when tax policy changed, and today, they survive mostly in archival records in the hands of collectors. Holding a stamp like this is almost like holding a piece of Wall Street's early days, a tangible connection to a time when taxes were paid with ink and paper instead of electronic transfers. Many collectors who pursue revenue stamps do so out of a deep appreciation for history and economics. The stories behind these stamps are often just as compelling as the images printed on them. Some may have come from massive trades conducted by now legendary banks, financial institutions, or investors. Every cancelled revenue stamp carries the weight of a real-life transaction. The ink markings, the wear, and even the paper texture tell us something about how and when it was used. It adds personality and story to each piece. That's what makes revenue stamps so captivating for collectors who look beyond the postal system and into the broader fabric of historical documentation. If you have a stamp like this one in your collection, it's worth taking the time to assess its condition carefully. Look for any faults like tears, missing corners, discoloration, or heavy creases, as these can affect its value. If the stamp has been neatly cancelled with pen markings or a dated hand stamp, it may add more interest to the piece. Collectors who enjoy reconstructing historical financial transactions will often pay more for stamps that have a clear provenance or were part of rare or unusual denominations. While online marketplaces may give you a rough idea of value, consulting a specialized dealer in revenue stamps or submitting your item to an appraisal through a philatelic society can help determine a more accurate and fair estimate. As we've seen today, stamps are more than postal tools. They are miniature records of commerce, law, and human activity. The $4 New York Stock Transfer Tax stamp is just one example of how a simple printed paper has survived decades and still carries meaning and value today. Whether you're a casual collector or a devoted philatelist, revenue stamps offer a deep and rewarding path into the lesser-known corners of stamp collecting. Thank you for watching today's video on Stamps Old World UK. We'll continue to explore rare stamps from all around the world, bringing you updated market values, historical facts, and expert collecting advice. Be sure to follow along for our next exploration into the hidden gems of the stamp world.